So that brings us to posture. So there's good posture and there's bad posture. So Tony and I are going to demonstrate bad posture to you first. This is our normal position. We're not on the dance
Before we
floor.
started dancing.
Right, okay, so what is good posture? Good posture is basically standing up straight.
Okay.
So how do we do that?
All right, so now here's where it starts getting a little bit more technical. Now, I know you've probably heard of the expression center, moving your center. The center is normally in this area here. Michael and I try to go into a little bit more detail here. We start talking about two centers when lined up in between those two centers create a common center. So that's what you've probably heard about with your center. So first center. Center of gravity. So if I put my hands around here, anywhere like around where your belt level is or lower in this area, that's your center of gravity. So what is the center of gravity for?
Takes you down.
Exactly. So think of the word gravity. Everything about it implies that it's pulling you down. So if you think about it, under your center of gravity, you have your hips, your knees, and your ankles. Everything about that takes you down. Okay, we only have our toes and our ankles. This is only as high as we can go underneath our center of gravity. So everything is pulling you down from underneath your center of gravity. So center of gravity helps you stay connected to the floor. That's when people use expressions like they're earthy, grounded, connected, settled, weighted. All of those mean that their center of gravity is connected down and not pushing them up out of the floor.
So somebody, if they want to be really heavy, they just collapse everything and they feel really heavy. It's hard to lift them.
Right, exactly.
So that's just letting this bottom part here drop down towards the ground.
Right, so now we have our yin and yang. With our heavy down part, we have to have an opposition. So that's when we start talking about our center of levitation. So where's the center of levitation?
From your sternum up.
Exactly. So we have...
I knew that.
You're so smart. So right here in our sternum, from there up, we have our center of levitation. And then what does levitation mean?
That goes up.
Exactly. So that's our lifting. So if you think about it, your arms are hanging by your side.
You can try this at home.
What do you do to put them into frame? You have to lift them to frame. So you're lifting your arms into frame right to where your sternum is. That's the height that you're holding them. Then from here, you lift your head up and over your frame. So there's a lifting sensation from the center of levitation up. So we have lifting from the levitation and then grounding and weight down into the floor from the center of gravity. And in between these 2 points, that's where we talk about moving your center. So if your center of levitation is lifted, so if we go back to our bad posture again, to make good posture, you hear, yeah, right. You have people who say, like, you know, tuck in your hips or, you know, lift it. If you lift your center of levitation as much as you possibly can, your center of gravity should sit right underneath it, and you should feel actually that there's like a little bit of a concave feeling underneath the rib cage rather than your tummy pushing out forward against your shirt. So you lift the center of levitation, the center of gravity sits in underneath, and that's good posture.
So let me ask you a question. Now, you don't mean that I should lift this up and curve it backwards?
No, because now, even if you curve back, your center of gravity is still too far forward, so it's not lined up anymore. So to be lined up,
so I need to lift the sternum forward.
Forward, exactly. So the center of levitation is always projected towards the front of the foot all the time. Okay, so then from there we have our frame up. From underneath the center of gravity, we have weight hanging down, and we have that opposition all the time.
So let me ask you one just clarifying question. So the actual lifting up through the sternum is what creates the lifting through the arms and through the head. So this is the source of the lifting, as opposed to thinking of lifting your arms and your head and then trying to do the center of levitation.
Right, so we're lifting from here, and it puts energy into our arms and into our head.
So those are a reflection of that center of levitation.
Exactly, rather than like just lifting the arms and lifting the head and not doing it from the center of levitation. Now, when you're lowering down, you'd want to feel like your center of levitation is lifting you out of it, so you have this opposition. So when you collapse down, you wouldn't actually drop down. And then vice versa, when you go up, you want to make sure that your center of gravity stays connected down to the ground so that you don't lift everything up and just pop out of the floor.
So it's a little bit like, for example, if you're in the bathtub and you have a balloon, you can try this at home, and you have a small balloon and you take it and you try and pull it underneath the water. If you try and pull a balloon underwater, it's extremely difficult, and the balloon is going to keep trying to pull upwards as you try and keep pulling downwards. So that creates a nice tone through the center.
That's a good description.
Thank you. And that's what you're doing. When you lower, your balloon is still trying to go up as you're pulling down through the bottom part.
I like that one.
Okay, that's it. There you go for posture.